Hey everyone, I kind of wanted to do a video about what roles do celebrities play in the environmental movement. I know for a lot of us, celebrity and influencer culture is now being married within each other, where a recent study actually showed that Generation Z is more invested in influencer culture than celebrity culture because it almost seems that influencers are more accessible than celebrities, which in a sense is somewhat true, but also need to understand how influencer culture is also toxic in a part of the system. And unfortunately, I am part of that system too, as now being a content creator in this space, but also wanting to really actively center and decenter when needed in conversations. Someone asked me, like, what are your thoughts on celebrities? So before I even talk about celebrities, I think it's really important to acknowledge that there are so many Black, Indigenous, people of color celebrities that are currently existing in these systems that are also actively fighting against systems of oppression in their own way. And so I think when critiquing celebrities, we also need to kind of acknowledge and check our own anti-Blackness, anti-indigeneity that can come out from these conversations, and really recognizing who we're trying to critique and who we're trying to have a conversation with. Because most of the times, I think, for me, celebrity culture, right? We all know that white dominant culture, especially white cis men, in celebrity cultures are often centered the most than compared to BIPOC celebrities. My experiences working with celebrities has been a mix, right? So I'll start off with the positive, right? In positive times, in what I work with environmental celebrities in the movements, is they often amplify my work, they interviewed me, they shared my resources, they are committed to working with other BIPOC organizers and grassroots organizations. And so I really applaud all the celebrities in the environmental movements that are really doing this in a really great and sustainable way. However, my negative experiences with other celebrities has been horrible, right? It's often tokenizing, right? It's often their teams forcing my team to meet with them and so they can have a conversation, when we know that celebrities don't also get that much agency in who they want to work with, right? They often have to do it because of the expansion of their brand or their mission or their organization or their corporation they own. And so often at times I'm put in these rooms with them and I'm just like, I'm not really invested in really having to re-traumatize myself and to share my trauma just so they can feel pity, to be like, okay, let me now help you in any way. And honestly, I think it's a slap to the face. It's not to say that I'm independent, I don't need anyone, but rather it's just the fact that I don't really feel the need to connect with people anymore who are not willing to connect with me. And I think it's normal to understand that we're not always going to be friends. I'm not asking for friendships, I'm asking for solidarity, and that's not often met. And it's disappointing to see that in the environmental movement, as it's becoming more popular, you see a lot of celebrities positioning themselves as the best as they can, but yet really miss the mark in how they forget that they're centering themselves and thus erasing a lot of voices in this movement. And then we get to the point where, you see celebrities creating nonprofit organizations or brands, such as corporations. And I think it's often really confusing for me to kind of understand that, because we know that environmental justice organizations receive the least amount of funding compared to any type of environmental organization. And so I generally remember this one time when I was at Ted Countdown in Scotland. I asked a celebrity, I'm not going to name the name, and I asked them, why is it that celebrities continue creating environmental NGOs when environmental NGOs already exist? What makes your work more unique and special? Is it the fact that you just want full control? Is it the fact that you want your name to be on it? Is it the fact that you want to be centered in this work, or your team is wanting to center you so you get that publicity? And so I often feel a bit confused about how do we really understand to sit down with these celebrities and to tell them, have you ever considered the idea that nonprofit industrial complex isn't always sustainable, and there's a lot of issues with that? And then when it comes to their own brands, right, their own businesses, asking them, is it really sustainable to be making a certain business that is exploiting natural resources from other communities and, donating yourself and calling yourself a 1% member for the Earth planet? It doesn't really make any sense to me. How is it that the power and privilege you carry is equitably being redistributed, right? Is it the fact that you're investing in BIPOC staff members? These are conversations that we don't always know, and I understand that, But it also makes me concerned of like when celebrities create their own brands, such as like marketing products that uses natural resources from a different country and then slapping the sticker of being Earth 1% for the planet, when in reality it's like, is that all you're going to do, right? Certification should not measure that. And so I think that celebrities already have an unchecked amount of wealth, right? I think like, yes, I can treat them as human beings, right? Everyone gets to deserve to be treated the same way that they want to be treated. But at the same time, the amount of wealth and wealth disparities that a lot of low-income communities of color like myself face is really difficult. I think one of the biggest issues for me as an independent environmental content creator in this space is having to ask for funding, asking for resources, right? Like, I'm not a nonprofit organization, and it's really hard for me to try to even get grants or to really get my ideas out there, right? Because most of the times doing media and climate education work is so gatekeep, meaning that I'm not someone who is traditionally to be used in commercial or marketing standards. And really, I've taken time to ask myself, like, what am I trying to fight in this industry when I know they're always going to often choose whiteness in this play that we don't really get these opportunities, right? Like, how do I get to instill my cultural lived experiences with other young environments of color that would want to watch that? And so I think trying to create independent medium for myself is super hard when I don't have the infrastructure nor I have the generational wealth. Like, I started to learn how to use a camera just this past year. I learned how to do Photoshop when I was in high school, and these resources weren't they costed money, and it took time for me to really save and to understand how do you edit, how are these tools, who has access to these resources when our own public educational systems in Los Angeles, for example, are being defunded, and kids like me that grew up in the same area don't get these opportunities to share these experiences. Yes, I think part of my frustration with celebrity culture is the fact of there are so many environmentalists, influencers like myself, or people who are researchers or academics that have been doing this work for decades and really want to be having these opportunities, but we don't, because we live in a society that glorifies individual, and it's almost like you have to repackage yourself and to really sell yourself in this industry. And I get it, you need to work hard, but at the same time, how much do I need to sacrifice my own lived values for something that's not always going to reach my community? Celebrities should be invested in social, racial, environmental movements, and they shouldn't be excluded from these conversations, of course. But I think that they also need to realize that if they're going to enter these movements, they must be ready to interrogate their own power, privilege, and resources that they have, and how they plan to equitably redistribute those resources. And I think that's something that really hurts me, is that I often go into these spaces or these commercial interviews or these project interviews and always being told you have a list, we don't want your words, the way that you write it, you need to tone it down. And there's just so much policing that goes behind my work and what I do, and often I just feel conflicted of do I really want to enter these higher level spaces when I know they're not going to treat me right, or I have to act a certain way? Do I have to sacrifice my values? That's something that I've been really conflicted about in these movements, right? I know influencer culture is also a huge issue, and I understand that and I acknowledge that too on my own end, the privilege I have. But something that I also have been very transparent about is really sharing the information of where those resources go or who is employed on my team. Why do I continue trying to exist in an industry or trying to create a show or trying to be something when they're just generally going to choose someone who is white and cis and not someone that looks like me in this industry, right? At the end of the day, my work has been really centered on, yes, every being, but mainly an aim at low-income children of color who came from similar backgrounds as me and didn't have the resources, and we really had to struggle to understand what life was like and to normalize injustice in our backyards, and yet having to build ourselves in this new evolution while also attaching that personal trauma narrative to us to show that we are human and that we experience and that we suffer, when in reality no being should suffer in this movement. Celebrities' roles in environmental movements should always be amplifiers, redistributors, healers, and this is what we really need, right? We don't need more nonprofits, we don't need more of your corporations or your brands that are increasing, right? What we need is celebrities to extend themselves to content creators, to environmental justice organizations, to grassroots activists and see how they can directly support us, right? Like for me, I would really love to just honestly be self-funded, to not have to take sponsored ads anymore. But unfortunately, in this capitalist world that I live in, it's like I have to contribute in some way to live and to survive, and to be able to produce projects and to pay my team equitably. Like that really matters to me. I really want to also bring up people other with me, right? Like it's not just for myself, it's for others around me. And so I think celebrities do need to have a reckon with their unchecked power. And I think this is something that is often hard to have, because who gets to have those conversations? I think those that are friends with celebrities, or celebrities within celebrity groups, should have those conversations to hold those celebrities accountable. But I think that if you're a celebrity friend and you have another celebrity friend that is really using the privilege and power and is being unchecked, you should have that right and space and autonomy to call them in and to call them out and to hold space for them, because you're the most closest in your life. I think I get disappointed when I see like celebrities that really are rooted in this justice-oriented lens, but don't have these conversations with their other celebrity friends. And so who gets to critique them, right? Like people who don't know them, the public, quote unquote, or people who are their friends that know them the best but aren't willing to hold them accountable, right? What do you think about celebrities in social, racial, or environmental movements? Like, should they stay? How should they use their power? If you like these videos, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, as I love talking about so many environmental issues that pertain to our modern society today.